Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I'm here to share with you my September journaling pages from my tarot journal. Now, normally I would have also my Self-Care Sunday and my Goddess Journal to show you, but as I mentioned last month in August and September for me were really busy months, and I just did not have time to work in my Goddess Journal or I didn't do any of my Self-Care Sunday spreads because I did a tarot challenge instead, which we will talk about here in a minute. My goddess for this month was Hecate, and I did do some work with her in terms of research and things of that nature, and a few readings that I just didn't end up recording in my tarot journal yet because I do have them saved on my phone, but they haven't made it into my Goddess Journal yet. So this time we're just strictly going to be focusing on my tarot journal. And to be perfectly honest, I did a lot of journaling actually, but it was all in this book. And this book, you can see, this book is starting to get really fat already. I just started this in, was it August? Yeah, so August. So 2 months, and that's where I'm at. I don't have my other one at hand to show you. Oh, yep. I lied. I do. So this was my first journal for the first half or the first 7 months of 2019. And it's full. Like you can see, I pretty much filled it. And this is where I am at for August and September. So I have been doing a lot of journaling because I'm over halfway through the journal already. So that should probably tell you how much I journaled in September. So I'm not even sure that this is going to make it through to the end of the year, but I really am going to try because I do try to keep my journals down to just two journals, half a year each, but that's not working out so well this year, so we might have to rethink things next year if I continue to journal the amount that I have been. So this is my September pages. Of course, I have my little bookmark that just lives in my journal now. And let's get you in nicely here. So for September, I have kind of a harvesty type vibe in my journal. I have a illustration that I printed out, some scrapbook paper, of course, the title, the Sabbath, and my calendar here with the moon phases as well. And you can probably tell that I did a lot of inking in this month. So I used the Tim Holtz distressed inks, and I distressed a lot of the things in this particular month because every month looks a little bit different for me in my journals. So I also have my card of the month, which relates back to my wheel of the year, or my year ahead spread. So for September, it was the 8 of Swords, and I have mentioned this before that although I did my year ahead spread with my Llewellyn Tarot, I tend to pull cards that the imagery itself has a vibe or a feel that matches the aesthetic that I'm going for that month. So sometimes I do use the Llewellyn Tarot, but in this case I use the Hudes because I just really like the color scheme of the Hudes Tarot. And I did use it in another spread, my month ahead spread, which I did forget to mention in my September reflections. So there is that. But anyway, I did use the Hudes Tarot, and I pulled that for my card of the month to just reconnect with that energy. I have a little fold out that I made for my list of decks. So in the first page here, I have the 3 decks that I used primarily throughout the month because that's a new practice that I'm working on throughout the rest of this year, and then we'll see going into the next year. So I have the Tarot of the Hidden Realms, which was the main deck that I did the challenge with, which we'll see here in a minute. The Shamanic Medicine Oracle was my main weekly Oracle deck, and then I had the Celtic Lenormand, which was the Lenormand deck I used throughout the month. And then inside you can see I just wrote the decks that I used, which we'll see here reflected in the journal, and that I also spoke about in my reflections video. So here I have my monthly reflections that I write at the end of the month. So this is blank when I first set this all up. Then I have, of course, my note for my monthly oracle, my new moon intention, which goes over here. And you'll see later on that I did not do the new moon on the 28th. I was super busy. I just didn't have time. And rather than try and stress myself out and try and get that done, I just didn't do it. So what I did do was I wrote the affirmation that was on the Spiritual Goodies September card, because I thought that just really, it worked really well for me. So I just wrote that down here as kind of my intention, my my affirmation for the new moon. And I think that worked really well. Again, my reflections are mostly about what I did tarot-wise. Originally, in the beginning of the year, it was more about a monthly type of reflection. Now it tends to be more of a reflection in terms of tarot, whereas this journal is strictly pretty much just all tarot and oracle. It's all about divination. So then we move into my, I say that, and then I have a whole section here on the autumn equinox, which is just a little bit that I wrote up about it. I have this little collage I created, and then I have a tarot spread that I found from Moon and Cactus, which was a really great one. I noted the decks that I used. And for this one, I used the Tarot de St. Croix and the Shamanic Healing Oracle. So here is my autumn equinox spread, and then of course my my reflections on that. And again, I always do the printouts of my readings so that I can put them in here so that I can come back and look at them later. Then I did my month ahead spread with the Hughes Tarot, and this was one. I don't remember if I found this somewhere or just kind of came to me, but it's the 3 cards are what to release, what to focus on, and what to embrace. And then I pulled a message from the Divine Doors. So that was just a really nice little quick month ahead spread, just to kind of give me an idea of where I'm headed to. And you can see, of course, I've been adding a bunch of scrapbooking to it as well. And this is the section in my journal for this month that I dedicated to the Harvest Moon Tarot Challenge by Lionheart. So I wrote up a little bit that was written about this tarot challenge, and then the deck that I was using with it. And I dedicated 4 pages, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I set up my journal for the month, I created this page, and I dedicated 4 pages to this challenge based on how many polls I was going to do. So I had talked about this in my reflection, where I had this particular challenge was easier for me because it was divided up into groups of 3. So I was able to do them as 3 card readings, and I did post all of these on Instagram. I actually did it this time. I followed through with the whole challenge and did the whole thing, and I was pretty proud of myself, and it was really awesome. So I have this introduction page here, and then I have where I had pasted in. So I figured out basically how many I could fit, approximately 2, I knew, on each page. So because I'm basically doing 6 cards, I knew I could do 3 and 3, and that would work per page. I would just, I'll also allowing for all of my pictures, because I like to have the images of the cards in there, and then what cards I pulled, and then my reflections. So I just divided that up, and basically each one of these little sections in the challenge got, a half a page essentially. And that's kind of how I figured out how much space I was going to need. So we had the month ahead, the reminder, the year so far, the good, the harvest, self-love, gratitude, to-do list. And you can see that I printed the little Instagram shots from them as well, because these are so cute. These are I can't talk. These are designed so well. I love them. So I printed them off and put them in my journal, which I will do also for October. And then for this one, because it ended here with the conclusion, I just left this page blank for the last 2. So I had gratitude, to-do list, be present, and the conclusion. And then I left a page here for a wrap-up reading. Now, this wasn't included in the challenge itself. It was just something that I kind of put together myself, and there really wasn't a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. I did a 4-card basic with a kind of what you thought going in, what you have learned coming out, and then just the kind of base block of what you've learned, what you've discovered through this process. There really wasn't positioned, so to speak. I just kind of laid the cards down, and that was kind of how I ended up reading it. And that was just a nice way for me to sort of wrap up this whole experience. Definitely something I plan on doing in October, and hopefully can manage to keep up with it, because it was a really great experience, and I got a lot of time to work with the Tarot of the Hidden Realms, which was a deck that I hadn't been able to use previously. So that was a really great experience. So these pages were blocked off, and I just added them, added in the spreads as I was doing them. So really on the second day of September, I started into my normal weekly layout, which I think I did this in August as well, but my journals always kind of change and morph and expand as my practice, changes and expands as well. So I do pull a monthly or a weekly oracle card. And like I said, I was using the shamanic medicine oracle cards, and I just make a full-size color copy of it, write a little caption from the book and a little, this was a little quote that was in the book. Then I do my weekly Lenormand reading. And these kind of vary based on whatever it is, what I'm kind of studying in Lenormand, because right now I am studying Lenormand and learning how to read it. So it's not always the same kind of layout, but basically I'm practicing different types of layout, different types of readings with it. But my focus is always, or my question is always, what should I be focusing on this week? And I take, my cards and I lay them down. For this one, I had done this 6-card reading, and the fox jumped out at me. So I set him aside and I included him in the pictures just so I remember that card jumped out at me. So that might be, something for me to connect with. And again, I was working with the Celtic Lenormand all week. You can see some days my collaging, scrapbooking is really laxing. Sometimes I don't do it at all. It just depends on, what's going on. And sometimes I'm a lot more elaborate with it. So it kind of depends on how much time I have when I sit down to actually do this. It's not a necessity. And as I've shown before, a lot of times I do readings on just a piece of notebook paper, and then I copy them over back into my journal later on. So moving into the first week, you see I was playing with my distressed inks and inking pages and all of that. So the first week, as I said in my reflections video, I worked with the Tarot de St. Croix and the Roots and Wings, and these are just my readings. I do daily polls Monday through Friday, and then a weekly reflection just of how things went that week, how the cards might have connected, that sort of thing. And it's getting dark for some reason, so let's open the window a little bit more. So the second week going in, here's my weekly card, which was the Stone People, and my weekly Lenormand, which I again use the Celtic because I use that through the entire month. And I'm getting weird sun glare. Sorry about that. So for like this one, I went and I found, I shuffled and then I found the significator, the woman significator card, and then I pulled the 3 cards that were after it, and that was what I should be focusing on this week. So it was a little bit different than the 6 cards I did before, the week before. So this is just kind of how I'm learning, how I'm playing, and, wrote my reflections on it. Moving into the next week, I worked with the Osho Zen Tarot and the Tao Oracle. Again, my polls Monday through Friday with my weekly reflections, and you can see that I did not do much in the way of scrapbooking. I did a little bit here. But this was a really busy week for me, and I can usually tell by looking at my journals how busy my weeks are, because when they're a little bit more sparse like this, it probably means that I had quite a bit going on, work and personal and stuff like that. So I didn't have time to do all the really elaborate stuff, but that's okay. This works just as well for me. It gets the point across. It gets my information down. It allows me to go back and check in, at the end of the evening or at the end of the week and see how things have progressed, how my cards have manifested in the energies that I've pulled into my week. And it's just a way for me to touch base. So it works whether it looks like this or whether it looks like this. So this was the full moon in Pisces reading that I did, and that was on the harvest moon. And I used the Tarot de St. Croix for that one. And again, just my reading and the actual card. And I pulled a card from, I think I pulled the new moon or full moon in Pisces card from the Moonology Oracle, which is not a deck that I've actually really worked with, so I've been trying to incorporate that in more. I also did an inner balance spread, obviously on Saturday, the 15th, and I used the Osho Zen and the Tao Oracle. And this is my own spread that I came up with, and I do have this available as a free download in my shop if you want to check that out. Then the next week we have my weekly card, which was the Bones for Casting for Divination. I had my weekly Lenormand. Again, what should I be focusing on? This time I did a 5-card draw, and I was reading it as a story, and that's kind of how the reading was reflected. Again, this is me playing, this is me learning. Of course, this is all good information, and I do take that into account, but it changing every week is reflective of what I'm learning in the book that I'm studying. So then we have the next week, which was the Antique Anatomy Tarot and the Shamanic Healing Oracle. And this one ended up with washi in between because I actually messed up here. So I was going through on Monday, I totally forgot to highlight my date, and I accidentally highlighted my my card names instead. And then I realized on Tuesday that I had done that, and I accidentally repeated it, and that's how I realized I did it. So I just covered those up with washi and rewrote them and fixed it that way. But then you can see I just carried that over through the next few days because that was, even though this was a mistake, you know, I could still make it look like it was somewhat intentional, even though I'm telling you now that it wasn't. I totally messed up, but that's okay. And then here you can see that I only went to Thursday, and that's because we left town on Friday. So my weekly reflections were from Thursday through Monday, and you will definitely see that break here as we come to the end of my journal. So this was a Messages from the Arcana spread that I did with the Antique Anatomy Tarot. And again, I did this on the 20th, which was Friday. I guess I did do that Friday. I don't think that's right. I think I did that Thursday. I think I wrote the date wrong. I'm almost positive I did that Thursday. Anyway, doesn't really matter. This is kind of like an interview spread from my tarot bound guide that I have. And yeah, it was just a kind of a get to know you spread. You pull one from each of the suits and then one from the majors, and you get your messages from that. So I have lots of spreads like this in the tarot bound guide. And then we come into the last really full week of September, and you can see here that like I totally phoned it in this week. I didn't feel good. I got sick when we were on vacation. I came home sick. It was a kind of a mess. I had to take a couple of days off in order to just kind of heal and recuperate. I really, as I mentioned in my reflections, I wasn't feeling it with the Silver Arrow Tarot. We were just not getting along. I wasn't wanting to pull cards from it. Even though I totally love this one is from the Inner Compass Oracle, and I adore that little deck, but I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't feel good. This was like some haphazard scrapbooking here. My daily pulls were, I didn't even do it till Wednesday, and they were really like half-hearted. Like I really wasn't even feeling it, and it's totally reflected in this page, and that's okay. That tells me when I go back and look at this versus this, I was feeling it here. I was connected. I was engaged with my cards during this period. When it came to this week, I just wasn't. And that's okay. Sometimes we're going to have weeks like that. And then I kind of stopped here because then I will move into October, even though technically there were 2 days in 2 days in the next week and in September, but you know, Sunday and Monday, I think. And but I'm gonna just kind of roll those into my October. So it's whatever the full week is, that's kind of where I stop. So then I will go in and plan my October from there. So that is a look at my September journal, and you can see like there's quite a bit here. Like I've been doing quite a bit of journaling lately. There was a lot in August too. So when you compare this to my previous journal, which this would have been like 3 months worth, I've definitely been upping my journal game. I've been doing it just a lot more frequently. And that's mostly due to how my practice is changing with me trying to use those wonderful challenges on Instagram in order to connect with my decks, making sure that I do switch my decks out weekly so that I'm getting that that connection to them, so that I'm making use of some of those decks in my collection that don't necessarily always get to come out. And also working with decks that kind of have that seasonal energy for me. And all of that, I think, is really reflected in my tarot journal, and that's one of the things that I really love about this whole process. If you are curious to find out more about tarot journaling and how I do it, I do have a YouTube video on how I journal, and I am also working on a journaling guide similar to my tarot bound one, but definitely focuses more on journaling as part of your tarot practice. So hopefully that will be ready for you here in the next couple months. And I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this look through my September tarot journal pages. I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.